The first step to transferring an image with the grid is to draw a grid on your original source material. In this case, a simple cartoon lifted off the internet. I measured it prior to setting up here. I know it's 5 inches tall by 7 inches across, and what we're going to do is we're going to double that. So we'll duplicate it. We'll have it 10 inches tall by 14 inches across. So take the whole thing and double it in size. And a very, very simple method. Once you learn how to do this method with this one, you can really apply it to any other image that you want to transfer. So we'll start off by drawing some lines. So I'm going to break it down just into inches, and that'll give us a pretty simple grid. Okay, so first I'm just going to draw a line across there and a line across here. All right, now I'll measure it out. So we have 5 across. I'm going to set this up here. One, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm just going to pull it over here. I won't use the actual cutting board to measure this. It's easier, but I'm just want to. You probably don't have one. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and then just draw those lines right across, right over top. Okay, and then do that the same thing on the vertical axis here. Also, make sure you can see it. Okay, so this is, start at this end. I'm just gonna put a line right across the end. And on the other end. Okay, and then I'll take measurements all the way down. Okay, and so now we have a grid. Over our fin. Okay. All right. Now what we'll do is we'll take this grid, and we'll take the same number of squares, and we'll double the size. So we'll take each square, and rather than 1 inch square, we'll take each square rather than 1 inch square, we'll double it, and it'll be twice as long, twice as high, and so the whole drawing will eventually be doubled in size. Okay, and we'll see that in a second. When you begin to transfer this, you'll really realize how easy it is. Because if you look at this grid right now, and you think about that you only really need to draw 1 square at a time, and you look at what's in some of these squares, it starts to look a little more simple. Again, here's a complicated part, a square here, and we've got about 3 lines. We have a little line running that way, we have a line running that way, and the top of the line describes the highlight and the eye, and that's it. So as long as you can find that square down here, which is the second one from the end, right there, then you simply go and put those few lines in that square. When you go into the next square here, what happened? When you go into the next square here, you see there's nothing. Oh, there's this little, I'll get my pencil out here. There's this little line here described along there. Okay, and so when you come down to this square here, there, when you look at this square here, and you come down to this square here, you realize it's like, that's what you've got to draw. That's pretty easy. And when you want to go over to the next square, see what's happening in the next square. Okay, next square here. like the same thing, right? It's the other part of the jowl that's coming down there. So you come back here, find that next square, and then connect the next line, and so on as you go through it. It's really, really simple. Okay. There's you're probably one of your more complicated squares. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, 9, or 10 lines in that square, but that's still it. And you can see when we start looking at this, this is really just a diagonal that goes across that square, so it starts giving us a sense of what's on this side, what's on that side, and then we can get our bearings. And these two lines are pretty straightforward. This one doesn't quite come to the halfway point, this one here just almost comes to the top, and so on. And as we work through it, we forget about the overall drawing for a while, and we just work square by square, and we can transfer the entire drawing. It's foolproof, really. And if you're concerned about not knowing which square is which, you could go down the side here and do like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, and give yourself an actual numbered, numerical, or alphabetical grid to follow. And then you would, of course, duplicate it down here. I have so much faith in this method and how easy it is that I would give my guarantee on it. And I want you to know that you don't have to know how to draw to do this. You really don't have to know anything about drawing. You don't even have to understand what's going on in that image that you're drawing. What you do have to be able to do is go into each one of those squares and copy whatever it is you see in that square. Now, that might get it to be a bit of a challenge at some places in a drawing, but there's even a simplification to help you with that. So I'm going to start actually upside down so you can see the drawing come together a little bit as I find these lines, and then I'll flip it right side up. So it just shows you that if it's upside down, I really don't have to know exactly how to draw it. Flipping it around in my head to draw it would drive me crazy. So I'm just going to trust in these squares as I go along. Now, when I'm looking at this drawing, I know right away that these squares here, these top squares in the drawing, are all just color. So I actually have 6 squares with nothing in them. Those 6 squares are right in here, okay? And this is all gray in here. So I can kind of go in there and just kind of give myself a reminder that I don't have to look at those again. Just kind of knock those off my list. Okay, I want to be able to erase it out, so I don't want to go dark, and that's why you wouldn't put your grid down as dark as well. Okay, down here, I have 2 squares that are just pure blue as well. There's no lines going through it at all. And what I'm doing is when I sort of put these little reminders in these here, is it gives me a reference point so I can find the other squares more easily. So the first thing I'll do is kind of block off any squares with nothing happening. And those are, I think, the only ones that have nothing. I'm not going to redo the Cartoon Network logo. So that might be an empty square. I think that's an empty square. So the Cartoon Network logo, I'm not going to mess around with that. I'll pretend that's just another empty square. Okay, so I have these 2, this corner one here, and these 6 up there are really nothing. So now I'm going to just go in and find a few lines, some real simple lines here. The first one I see is right in the middle on the other side of these 3 here. It's just like the outline shape, this big yellow shape, and it's 1, 2, 3, and almost to the 4th one in. So I go 1, 2, 3, and then right about here is where I see that line kind of go coming into that square, and I got a little narrow strip of blue along here, but it kind of rounds out as it goes to the top, maybe comes over to about here. Okay, so I can come in now pretty confidently. I'm going to adjust that a little bit there, and just come up here, and while I'm looking at it, then go in there and just try to get that line to start to curve. I want to do something like that, and that's it. That's that square. Oh, nope, there's one more line in that square. Okay, so we have, I'm not sure if you can see the little feature here. One little feature here. And it's the end of the ear. It comes down about this far into here. I see there's a little space there. And it comes about a little bit past the halfway point there, so I'm going to say it's about like this. And rounds around. And keeps on at an angle until it kind of goes out of that box. Okay. Now, since I'm on that line anyway, I'm going to go to the next box and look and see what I got in there. And that's this box here. And I got a few lines in there, but I'm going to connect them up. I can see this one starts here, and this curve goes all the way over to about this part here. But it's just basically a simple curve. So I'm going to come along here and put in that simple curve. And I know it connects to this. Okay, that's, it's pretty hard to not see that. If it's a really complex drawing, that would be a little, you wouldn't know maybe even what you were drawing at that stage, but that's pretty straightforward. Okay. All right, the other thing I see in here is I see that this line here goes up a little bit, like that. Okay, and I can see I'm off a little bit with this. I came over a little too quick. And then here it comes up a little further and curves in. So about like that. Now keep in mind, you can move these lines around once you've drawn them in, because you'll see your image and any major inaccuracies will be very easy to see. I have one little line that comes across the bottom here, and it's something like this. And it doesn't come quite as far as this. It comes across, and it disappears about there, and ends up in the next square. So we can have this pinched together a little bit. Okay. Then I have the last line I have in here is this little round corner here. So when I look here, there's a little space, and this line starts here. And it doesn't go all the way to the halfway point. It goes to about here, and then just curves around. And that's it for that square. So I'm going to come right across here. So I should have done this earlier, but so say you get to a point and you're not sure how to draw that. You look at maybe that eye and you say, you know, that eye is really, where am I here? Oh, there we go. Okay. So you look at that eye and you say that, wow, I can't quite figure out where that is in that square. So if you have a particular issue like that, say you get something that's really complicated, then take the square that you have, cut it in half again. Okay, I'm going to do that. And you'd measure it. Of course, you know it's a 1/2 inch. And I'll just draw it right there. And it's a 1/2 inch. And just draw like that. So suddenly you have another set of reference points, and you can go to your larger grid where you're drawing the eye and divide that so that it matches your grid. 2 inches, right? Divide it in half. So you divide it in half so that grid matches the little grid you've drawn on the eye. And then positioning, then drawing the eye is very, very easy, because I know that there's a little bit piece of it here, a little piece of it here. I know there's a nice big round section here, and I know it cuts across here. And it just becomes very, very easy to draw the eye that way. And then when we get into the highlights, I can see that the highlight is almost all in here. And this highlight crosses right over with a little X going through it, like that. Okay, and then I can exact it up. Now, if, say for example, that's not enough, it's really complicated, well, then you would go in there and you would divide it again and do the same thing on your grid. And then if it was not enough, divide that again and again and again. So when you got to areas that were complicated or complex and very hard to follow, you break it into a smaller grid within the larger grid. And as long as you duplicate that on your larger grid, everything's going to be exact. So there's really nothing too complex that you can't really transfer as long as you're willing to break the grid down. Okay, I'll clean that up. I'll let you have a look at it once it's cleaned up. But again, you can see it. I'm fussing with it way too much, but I'm going to clean it up and you'll see it. I'll give you the erase the lines out stage. So I don't need some of this stuff anymore, so I'll get rid of that right away. Okay. I'll leave the frame for the grid, but I'll take out the grid lines as much as possible. And again, remember, I put them in really dark so that you could see them. So they're gonna still be visible, but I'll take them out so they don't interfere quite as much with how the lines we're looking at. You're going to get it to about this stage, and then you'll kind of go in and you'll clean up your lines and you'll reinforce your lines. Now I should be able to go over that and erase it. This is pretty good ink. Test it very carefully first before you do it, but it shouldn't be a problem. So I should be able to go into an area like, what did I just finish doing? Something that's a little more dry, and I should be able to go right over top with my eraser and take it, clean up those fuzzy pencil lines. Oh, okay, not so indelible. Okay, good to know. We'll get different pens next time. Okay, and you can see it's pretty close to the original in terms of where the lines are and all the rest. And now, of course, though, what I would probably do next step is get the acrylics out and I'll start matching colors.